They told me this is how the kings of Lagos are made. Do you want the throne, or do you want to stay hungry forever?
The shovel hit something hard, a sound that rang out like a bell in the middle of the Lagos night. Ola's hands were shaking as he wiped sweat from his forehead, but the dirt on his palms just turned to mud. The air was so thick with humidity it felt like breathing through a wet blanket. Behind him, Dele and Tunde were breathing fast, their chests heaving in the dark. The bag they had brought was already heavy, but the weight of what they were doing felt even heavier. The smell of the graveyard was thick with damp soil and something metallic that made Ola's stomach turn. They weren't supposed to be here, and they definitely weren't supposed to be digging in this section of the cemetery where the headstones were crumbled and forgotten. The sound of a distant police siren cut through the crickets chirping, making everyone freeze in place. Ola gripped the shovel handle until his knuckles hurt, staring at the rusted gates. The light from the moon was thin, casting long crooked shadows across the fresh mounds of earth. Dele grabbed the edge of the wooden box they had uncovered, his knuckles white. He whispered for them to move faster, his eyes darting toward the darkness beyond the fence. Every snap of a twig in the distance sounded like a gunshot. They hoisted the heavy, cold object out of the ground and wrapped it in a thick black tarp. It felt solid and wrong, a shape that did not belong above the grass. A sudden gust of wind blew through the trees, making the dry leaves rattle like old bones. The temperature seemed to drop 20 degrees in a single second. They dragged the load toward the idling G-Wagon parked on the dirt path just outside the gates. A stray dog began to bark a few yards away, its eyes glowing green in the moonlight as it bared its teeth. The boys didn't look at the dog. They only looked at the trunk of the car. They shoved the tarp-wrapped burden into the back, the suspension of the luxury SUV creaking under the sudden weight. Ola felt a drop of rain hit his neck, but it felt oily, not like water. As the trunk slammed shut, the sound echoed across the silent tombstones like a final judgment. Ola looked at his friends, seeing their terrified faces illuminated by the red glow of the taillights. He realized there was no turning back now. The choice was made. They jumped inside the vehicle, the leather seats feeling too soft and too expensive for the filth covering their clothes. The smell of expensive car perfume fought with the scent of graveyard mud. Ola jammed the key into the ignition and the engine roared to life, a beast waking up in the silence. Just as they pulled toward the main road, a flashlight beam swept across their windshield, blinding them for a split second. A man in a dark uniform stepped out from behind a large mahogany tree, raising a hand to stop them. Ola's heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird trying to break free. The car's dashboard clock flickered to 12 o'clock, the red numbers pulsing in the dark cabin. He didn't tap the brakes. He pressed the gas pedal all the way to the floor. The smell of burning rubber filled the cabin as the tires screamed against the pavement. The officer jumped out of the way just in time, his shout lost in the roar of the engine. They flew onto the expressway, the lights of the city flickering in the distance like a million promises they couldn't wait to collect. No one spoke a word. They just watched the speedometer needle climb higher and higher. They were safe for now, but the bag in the back seemed to grow heavier with every mile they traveled toward the outskirts. When they finally reached the bridge over the dark water of the lagoon, Ola pulled over. He looked in the rearview mirror and saw something he could not explain. In the back seat, where the tarp was wrapped around their prize, a thin trail of black smoke was beginning to leak out. It moved like a snake, coiling around the headrests even though nothing was on fire and the air was cold. The smoke didn't rise. It sank toward the floorboards, hugging the carpet like a living thing. The shack sat at the end of a long, overgrown path where the trees grew so close together they blocked out the stars. Inside, the walls were lined with clay pots and bird feathers that twitched even though there was no breeze. The old man sat in the corner, his skin looking like wrinkled leather and his eyes covered in a milky film. He did not look up when they entered, but he knew exactly what they had brought from the earth. The smell of incense and dried blood was so strong it felt like a physical weight on their chests. He told them to place the bag in the center of the room on a floor made of packed red clay. A heavy iron pot in the corner suddenly began to boil, the water hissing and popping though there was no fire beneath it. Tunde stepped back, his legs trembling so hard he nearly knocked over a shelf of glass jars. He wanted to run, to go back to being poor and hungry, but the promise of the life he had always dreamed of kept his feet glued to the dirt floor. The old man reached into the tarp and pulled out the skull, his fingers tracing the bone with a strange kind of affection. He looked at each of them, his cloudy eyes turning sharp and bright for just a moment. He told them they could have everything, the money, the cars, the power, but the price was set in stone. Outside, a sudden thunderstorm broke, but no rain fell. Only loud, dry cracks of lightning hit the trees. They would have exactly 5 years to enjoy the wealth. Not a day more, not a second less. The light in the room shifted from the yellow of the lantern to a deep, bruised purple that made their skin look bruised. Dele asked what would happen when the time was up, but the old man just laughed. It was a dry, rattling sound that made the hair on Ola's neck stand up. The ritual began with the splashing of a dark, thick liquid across their bare feet. It felt ice-cold, like stepping into a frozen river in the middle of a fever. They had to repeat words that felt like sand in their mouths, ancient sounds that tasted of iron and salt. As they spoke, the ground beneath them seemed to hum with a low vibration that shook their teeth. One by one, they had to press their thumbs into a bowl of black paste that smelled of sulfur. When Ola's skin touched the mixture, he felt a sharp sting, like 100 needles piercing his thumb at once. He looked down and saw a mark forming under his skin, a small dark circle that pulsed like a second heart. The old man told them the clock started now, and the first sign would come before the sun touched the horizon. Tunde was the first to react. He gripped his throat, his eyes bulging as he tried to catch his breath. He fell to his knees, clawing at the air, his face turning a shade of gray that matched the ash in the hearth. The old man did not move to help him. He just watched with a blank expression. The air in the room became so thick they could hardly move their limbs. A mirror on the wall cracked from top to bottom with a sound like a whip. Tunde stopped struggling and stared at the corner of the room, his mouth hanging open in a silent scream. He wasn't looking at the ritualist or his friends. He was looking at a shadow that shouldn't have been there, a shape that moved against the wall without a body to cast it. The shadow reached out a long, thin finger and touched Tunde's forehead. Tunde's eyes rolled back into his head, and he began to laugh, a high, shrill sound that did not belong to a human being. 6 months later, the Lagos sun bounced off the chrome of 4 brand new G-Wagons parked outside a club in Victoria Island. Ola stepped out of the lead car, his suit costing more than his father made in a year of hard labor. The mark on his thumb was hidden by a heavy gold ring, but he could still feel it pulsing against his bone. People cleared the way as they walked in, the music thumping so hard it shook the glass in the windows. They were the kings of the city now, spending naira like it was worthless paper. Every bottle brought to their table was wrapped in sparklers, lighting up the dark room with artificial stars. A glass of champagne on the table shattered for no reason, spilling bubbles across Ola's expensive leather shoes. Dele was laughing, surrounded by people who hung on his every word, hoping some of his luck would rub off on them. He did not seem to notice the way his hand shook when he reached for his drink. They had the penthouses, the armed security detail, and the respect they had always craved. But every time Ola looked at a clock, his heart skipped a beat. He could see the numbers counting down in the back of his mind, a silent thief stealing his life. They decided to go home to the village to show off their new status to the people who used to look down on them. As they drove through the rusted gates of the village, a flock of crows hit the windshield of the lead car, leaving streaks of red across the glass. The village air felt different, stagnant and heavy, with a warning they chose to ignore. Ola's mother cried when she saw the bundles of cash he laid on her wooden table. She touched his face with shaking hands, asking where all this wealth had come from so suddenly. Ola lied, telling her about international business deals and oil contracts, but he could not look her in the eye. The smell of his mother's cooking, usually his favorite thing in the world, made him feel sick to his stomach. He saw the way she looked at the gold ring on his thumb, her eyes full of a worry she could not explain. He stepped outside to smoke, looking at the dusty road where he used to play as a boy with nothing in his pockets. The wind suddenly picked up, blowing a swirl of black sand around his feet in a perfect tight circle. He saw Tunde sitting on a bench near the village well. Tunde hadn't bought a car or a mansion. He just sat there in the same dusty clothes, staring at nothing, whispering to the air. His skin had turned a pale, sickly yellow, and his hair was falling out in large clumps. When Ola approached him, Tunde did not look up. He just muttered about the shadow man and how the 5 years were moving faster than the wind. He said the shadow was getting taller every night, standing over his bed while he tried to sleep. Ola felt a chill run down his spine, even in the blistering heat of the afternoon sun. He checked his watch. Exactly 4 years and 3 months left. A radio in a nearby shop suddenly cut to static, and for a second, Ola heard the old ritualist's dry laughter coming through the speakers. That night, back in his Lagos penthouse, Ola woke up to a sound in his bedroom. It was a soft, wet sliding noise like something heavy and damp being dragged across the floor. He sat up, his heart racing. He looked toward the foot of his bed and saw a pair of wet, muddy footprints on the white carpet. They were coming from the bathroom, but the door was locked and no one was there. The television in the corner flickered onto a channel of pure static, the volume screaming at its highest level. The third year was a blur of paranoia and visits to expensive hospitals that could find nothing wrong. Dele was the next to crack under the pressure. He had planned the biggest wedding Lagos had ever seen, a 3-day celebration with international guests and a cake the size of a small car. But as he stood at the altar, looking at his beautiful bride, his face went white. He grabbed the priest's arm, his voice a terrified whisper that echoed through the church. He said he could not see the bride's face anymore. He said all he saw was a skeleton wrapped in a white dress, its jaw unhinged and laughing at him. The massive crystal chandelier above the guests began to sway violently, though every window was shut and the air was still. Dele screamed and ran from the church, leaving his bride standing there in front of 1,000 shocked guests. He did not stop until he reached the edge of the lagoon, where he threw his diamond-encrusted phone and his car keys into the black water. He started hearing voices in the hum of the air conditioner and the roar of the car engines. He locked himself in his mansion, covering every single mirror with thick black cloth. He told Ola that the faces in the mirrors weren't theirs anymore. They were the faces of the people they had stepped on to get here. The wealth was still there. The bank accounts were overflowing, but the pleasure had turned to ash in their mouths. A black bird flew into the closed window of Ola's office, its body thudding against the glass before falling silent on the ledge. The fourth year felt like a slow walk toward a cliff. Ola tried to focus on his businesses, but the numbers on the spreadsheet started looking like dates and times. He saw the mark on his thumb growing, the black circle now reaching his wrist like a dark glove. His skin felt cold to the touch, no matter how many blankets he piled on his bed. He stopped going out to the clubs. He stopped answering the phone when his family called. The G-Wagon sat in the driveway, covered in a layer of dust that no one dared to wipe away. He visited Tunde one last time in the village. The streetlights outside Tunde's house all blew out at once as Ola pulled up, plunging the neighborhood into total darkness. Tunde was gone. The neighbors said he had simply walked into the forest one night, barefoot and singing a song in a language no one recognized. All that was left in his room was a pile of cash and a single human bone sitting on the center of the pillow. Ola felt the weight of the 5 years pressing down on him like a mountain of lead. He looked at his calendar. He had 6 months left. The air in his penthouse felt thin and metallic, like he was breathing in a graveyard. He decided to give all the money away, thinking he could buy his way out of the contract. He wrote massive checks to charities, to his family, to strangers he saw on the street. But every time he signed his name, the ink turned to thick, dark blood on the paper before he could finish. The heavy oak door of his study slammed shut and locked itself from the outside, trapping him in the dark. Ola sat in the silence, listening to the clock on the wall. Every tick sounded like a heavy footstep coming closer. He realized that the money did not belong to him, and it did not belong to the world. It was just bait for a trap that had been set long before he was born. He looked at his hands in the moonlight and saw that his fingernails were turning black and brittle, just like the dirt in the graveyard where they had started this journey. The final month arrived with a heat wave that cracked the very pavement of the city. Ola lived in a single room now, the rest of the mansion feeling like a cold, empty tomb. He did not eat. He did not sleep. He just watched the sun rise and set, counting every second as it slipped away. The gold ring had fallen off because his finger had shriveled so much it could no longer hold the weight. The mark was no longer a circle. It was a map of black, pulsing veins covering his entire arm. He heard a car pull up outside on the gravel driveway. The sound of a heavy metal chain rattling against the floor echoed through the vents of the house. It was Dele's car, but when Ola looked out the window, the driver's seat was empty. The door swung open on its own, waiting for a passenger. Ola knew it was time. He did not fight it. He walked down the stairs, his legs feeling like they were made of stone. He saw the shadow man standing in the foyer, taller than the ceiling now, filling the entire space with a cold darkness. The shadow had no face, but Ola could feel its hunger. It wasn't fear anymore. It was just a cold, empty realization of the debt. He stepped out into the night air, which smelled of damp earth and old incense. Every dog in the city began to howl at the same time, a sound that rose and fell like a funeral song. He drove back to the graveyard where it all started, the car moving as if it were on tracks. The G-Wagon moved smoothly, the engine silent as a ghost. He walked to the spot where they had dug the hole 5 years ago. The grass had never grown back there. It was just a patch of black, dead dirt that seemed to swallow the light. He saw 2 other shapes waiting for him in the moonlight. One was Tunde, or the hollow shell that used to be him, and the other was Dele, who was weeping without making a sound. They stood in a circle, the same way they had stood around the bag that first night. The ground beneath their feet began to soften, turning into a thick black liquid that pulled at their ankles. The shadow man appeared in the center of the circle, his form flickering like a dying candle. He reached out and touched each of them on the chest, right over their hearts. Ola felt a sudden sharp pain, a coldness that shattered his bones, and then nothing. He felt his body becoming light, like smoke rising from a blown-out flame. He looked down and saw his expensive designer suit lying on the ground, empty and limp. His body was gone, but his mind remained, trapped in the freezing air above the grave. The sun began to rise over the Lagos skyline, painting the luxury buildings in shades of gold and orange. A single gold coin rolled across the dead dirt, stopping at the very edge of the hole they had dug. The wealth they had traded their souls for was still there, sitting in silent bank accounts and parked in driveways across the city. The G-Wagon was still shiny and new, the leather seats still soft and smelling of success. But the men who had owned them were nothing but whispers in the wind that blew through the cemetery trees. The world moved on, the city grew louder, and the cycle began again as someone else found the path to the shack in the woods. But for Ola, the nightmare didn't end with death. He was forced to watch as a new group of young men arrived at the cemetery gates a year later. They were hungry, tired of being poor, and carrying a shovel just like he had. Ola tried to scream, to warn them to run as far away as they could, but no sound came out of his smoke-like throat. He watched as they dug in the same spot, their eyes wide with the same greed that had consumed him. He saw the shadow man standing behind them, smiling a mouthless smile as they hit something hard in the dirt. The weight of the gold was just the lead weight pulling them toward the same darkness. Ola realized then that the 5 years weren't a gift. They were a recruitment period. He was now a part of the graveyard, a silent guardian of the greed that fueled the Shadow Man's power. Wealth bought with blood has a way of returning to the earth, but it always leaves a trail of breadcrumbs for the next victim. It glitters in the sun to attract the eyes of those who think they are smarter than fate. But the earth never forgets a debt, and the Shadow Man always collects every single cent with interest. The 5 years were over, the silence was absolute, and as the new men opened the bag, Ola felt himself being pulled down into the dirt to make room for the next set of souls. The trap was reset, the bait was fresh, and the clock began to tick once more for 3 new kings of the city.